Good morning, y'all. Welcome back to Straightforward Therapeutics. I hope you're enjoying this series on relationship. As I've said several times already, relationship, I believe, is the most important thing we got going on. First, our relationship with God, that is primary. Second, our relationship with our family, and then everybody else around us. God or Jesus really didn't make a lot of differentiation between relationship with our family and our neighbor. Neighbor is people close to you. Nigh, you notice the first part of that word neighbor is nigh. So it's the people close to you. But, we spend a lot more time with our family generally than we do other people. And so, and we are a lot more comfortable when we're around family members than we are other people. And so we tend to show ourselves up a little more when we're around those people that we're closest to. And so it's important for us to realize that we shouldn't take advantage of our relationships. My dog loves me, and I'm very nice to my dog, but if I was to be mean to him, the next day he'd come back and he'd love me probably just as much as he did before. But eventually, if I continue to be cruel to my animal, he's going to draw away from me. When he sees me, he's not going to want to be around me. And so, even a pet recognizes the fact that relationship has to be fostered and nurtured and taken care of. And so I want to talk today about an issue that is often in relationships that really causes a lot of problem, and that is called codependency. Codependency is not dependency. Dependency is when you're dependent upon another person. Codependency is when you tend to put other people's needs above your own. There's a lot of ways to describe codependency. One of the ways that I like to describe it is thinking with your heart and not with your head. And in other words, we allow our emotions to drive our thinking once again, which generally always ends up poorly in some shape, form, or fashion. Codependency is a relationship where one person consistently puts another person's needs ahead of their own, often to the point of neglecting themselves. Interestingly enough, I'm a counselor, and there is a book called the DSM-5. Okay, they may have a new one out by now. I don't know. But anyway, I don't do a lot of insurance work. All my work usually is cash or check or money order or whatever. But if I bill an insurance company, they have to have a code as to what it is or what service I performed or what disorder that I'm dealing with. And so, if there's a substance abuse disorder or there's a personality disorder or whatever, everything has a code. There is actually no code for codependency. And the reason being is that there are so many traits that it encompasses. It's really something that is pretty widespread and varied as far as how it can be recognized. I'll tell you a little story. I'm a person who wants to fix problems. If you're codependent, and let me say this, if you're codependent, probably the root of it to a certain extent is low self-esteem. And if you've had an addiction problem in your past, you were you're a recovering alcoholic or drug addict, good chance you're codependent. The reason being is that there is guilt that's involved in your past behaviors. Or maybe it was the right way you were raised to begin with that contributed to the addiction. But at any rate, there's a part of us that wants to be thought well of, that wants to make up maybe for some of the wrongs that we've done by being a better person. And as a Christian, let me tell you, codependency can really get muddled up because it's easy to justify and rationalize why we are extending our boundaries by telling ourselves, well, that's what Jesus would do. Or that's that's what a Christian is supposed to do. I noticed in the Bible, even Jesus had boundaries. There were times when people came to him, and Jesus literally said, it's not my time. You know, it's this is not what I'm here for. And so even he had boundaries, even though people had needs, you know, that maybe they wanted to visit with him or whatever. You know, I think about the man at the gate beautiful that Peter and John healed. Okay, did Jesus love this guy? Sure, he did. Absolutely, he did. And but yet at the same time, how many times did Jesus go right by that guy who was begging at that gate beautiful, but for whatever reason at that time and place was not the moment that Christ had to take time to minister to this guy. But he knew that there would be someone else that would come along eventually, probably, in his foreknowledge. But at any rate, we don't want to get into the weeds too much. But I was going to tell you a story. So my wife, Gina, who I'm going to interview, and I think in our next video, I'm going to do an interview with Gina, because if there's ever a person that I know who is a student of relationship and friendship, when I met her, she was heavily involved in making sure that she was a good friend to the people she knew. And but she is not codependent in any shape, form, or fashion. Codependency is when, you know, if someone gets offended, even if you're right, I mean, you feel like you got to fix that, man. I mean, like you cannot sleep knowing that somebody has got something weighing heavy on their heart against you. And I mean, it's like I've got to be the problem fixer. Obviously, I'm a counselor, so that's part of it, right? But I remember one time we were pastoring a little church in a town called Reeds, Missouri, which I always tell people is the armpit of Missouri. It was not a very glamorous place to be, and it was my first church that I pastored, and we had a lot of problems in that church, even though we had very few people. And but yet at the same time, you know, God used all of that to make me a better person and a better minister. But I remember one time there was a problem going on, and man, it was as big a problem as that little church could possibly produce, to be quite honest. And I remember going to bed one night about 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, and literally so eat up with you know, anger and bitterness, and the fact that people were talking about me and saying things that weren't true, and had negative feelings towards me. And I remember staring at a spot in the ceiling literally for hours. It was about 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and it seemed like it had only been a few minutes. I was just seething with you know, anger and hurt and you know, everything you can think of as far as emotions. And my wife was laying in the bed next to me, and she is notorious for snoring anytime she's asleep. But she had this little snore she did back then. It's evolved since then. But it sounded like, if you grew up in the era that I grew up in, you know what it sounds like when the TV was off channel. It sounded like something along that line. And so anyway, I was laying there, and I was thinking about all these things and things people were saying about me and how I needed to fix this problem and this and that and the other. And all of a sudden, and she'd probably been doing it for hours, but all of a sudden I became aware of it, and I heard this little, and I looked over at her, and she is just sound asleep. I mean, sleeping like a baby. And I reached over and I grabbed her by the shoulder and I shook her, and I said, "How can you sleep?" She said, "What?" And she woke up with sleepy eyes. And I said, "How can you sleep? How can you sleep knowing the things that people are saying about us that are not true, knowing the things that they're doing?" And she looked at me through those sleepy eyes and she said, "Well, they're sleeping." So true. So true. When you're codependent, you're all worked up about something. You're worried about what people are doing. And, you know, they're not worried about it at all. They're sleeping like a baby, even though they're the ones that probably offended against you. And so, but you've got to fix that problem. Now, codependency is like a personality disorder. It's like the color of your eyes. It's not going to go away. You can't go to the doctor and get a pill for codependency. Okay? It's something that you have to address yourself. First of all, you got to be aware of it. How do you know you're codependent? Well, here's some things you can give consideration to. Do you have a problem saying no to people? even when you know you don't have the time or the money. People want to borrow money from them, and you loan money to them, even though you know good and well that really you don't have that money to loan. But then again, you tell yourself, well, that's what Jesus would do, Or maybe people expect you to, they ask for people to volunteer for something, and you're always the first one to say, I'll do it, even though your plate is already loaded up and full. And you know that you probably really don't have time to do that, and it's going to take away quality time from yourself and your family. And that's part of codependency. It's thinking with your heart and not with your head. One way you can address it is, first of all, being aware of it, looking back. And here's a great place for your journal. Here's a great place for journaling. You go back in your journal and you think to yourself, how many situations and hardships have I caused myself by just unwilling to say no? And how many relationships have I gone back to the person and grumbled and apologized and ate crow when I know good and well I wasn't the one that did the wrong? Now, I'm not saying that you should never be a peacemaker. I have been a pastor for many years, and there's many times that I went to people's houses and built a bridge just to make that relationship short up enough where they would come back to church and continue to hopefully get a word from the Lord. But I'm saying that oftentimes, we allow ourselves to be taken advantage of and continue to be vulnerable to other people's attacks merely because we don't want them to think bad of us. And obviously they already think bad of you, or they wouldn't treat you like they do. And so, but one thing is to go and journal and look and see what kind of situations have occurred in your life that is a direct result of this codependency. Another thing is to sit down and make yourself, after you've looked at that, make yourself a good list of boundaries, okay? Boundaries are internal rules. They're rules that you establish for yourself. I always tell people in regards to sexual dysfunction, the only person who can establish a rules for yourself is you. People can make you conform to something, but only you can submit, because that's an act of the will. So, you sit down and you make up a set of rules. These are the boundaries that I'm going to establish for myself. I'll give you an example. Back when I was pastoring years ago, I would loan money to people. People would come to me in the church who, and oftentimes, or maybe just friends or whatever. And, man, you want to be a good friend. You want to be a good pastor or whatever. You want to be a help. And so, we were really struggling ourselves financially. And, and so people would borrow money, and oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes they would never pay you back. They didn't have the money to pay you back. Well, guess what? Normally when somebody owes you money and they don't pay you back, what do? They withdraw from you. They don't want to see you because they know they owe you. And so they don't want to think about it. And so anyhow, so basically, here is a person who you thought well enough of, or considered to be a close enough friend, that you were willing to sacrifice your own finances to try to help them. And now then, because you help them, there's a wedge driven in between your relationship. And because you're codependent and you knew that you probably should have said no to begin with, it makes the anger and frustration even greater. Because in your heart of hearts, man, I shouldn't even have done that anyhow. I'm not only am I mad at them, I'm mad at myself for doing it. And so it was just a bad situation. So years ago, I set a boundary for myself that if somebody came to me and wanted to borrow money, okay, they needed cash, that I would not loan it to them unless I actually had it to give. But if I did give it, I gave it. I didn't loan it. Okay? I would just give it to them. Here, this is a gift. You don't owe me anything. Here's the deal. When you do that, your friendship is shored up. They're not going to think that they owe you any money. And you're going to be a blessing to somebody. And God's going to bless you back because that's what He does. Okay? And so there's no harm to your friendship. You've only done it if you knew that you were able to do it. Okay? So you didn't expect to get it back. Now, somebody might say, well, wow, man, as soon as people find out that you're willing to give them money for nothing, you're going to be taken advantage of. Not so. because second boundary associated with that rule is that I only do it once. And so that's the boundary. So if somebody did come back and ask again, then I would remind them, you remember that I did help you before. And so you know that I care about you. But honestly, right now, I'm just not in a position to do it. I'm so sorry. Well, you know what? We're not going to lose friendship over that because they know that I care about them because I've already tried to help them. And the second thing is that they're probably not going to come back and ask me a third time because they've already been turned down once now. And so my friendship is intact. I blessed somebody with the blessings that God gave me. I'm not extending myself more than I should, and everything works out. That's just one example of a boundary that you can establish for yourself. And so, I don't have time to go into too much deeper here, but there's a lot more that can be said about codependency. Let me give you a good resource. I call her the queen of codependency, a lady by the name of Melanie Beatty, Beatty, I believe it is, wrote a book entitled Codependent No More. And if you would like to learn more about codependency and how it affects relationships, and it does affect relationships in so many ways, because oftentimes we try to control people. We want them to do what we want them to do because we think it's best for them, but when they don't do it, it creates a lot of anger and frustration inside of us. This is a huge, huge issue. I'm just touching the very, very tip of the iceberg here. But if you'd like to know a lot more about it, read Melanie's book. Again, there's a link to my email there on the YouTube channel here. Feel free to connect with me, and I will be happy to converse with you regarding this. And so, until next time, I hope that we're staying straightforward. Remember, straight means laser focus. Forward means we're making progress. We're not shooting for perfection. We're shooting for progress, right? And so anyway, I look forward to seeing you again very soon. And God bless you guys.